Asha stepped into the grand, marble-floored lobby of Vanguard Studios, her heart racing. The walls gleamed with bright, modern art, and crystal chandeliers cast an ethereal glow over everything. The faint scent of luxury perfumes and freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air. Everything in this place screamed success, the kind she had only ever seen in glossy magazines and on Instagram. She clutched the leather strap of her purse a little tighter, as if it could anchor her to reality. This wasn't her world. Her clothes, a simple yet elegant white dress paired with sensible shoes, felt painfully out of place among the other women dressed in haute couture. Their heels clicked confidently across the floor, their faces painted with the kind of perfection that only years of privilege could buy. Asha had always admired these women from afar, but now she was here on the other side. Today was her first day as a junior designer at Vanguard Studios, a dream job that had taken her years to land. The company, led by the famous CEO and fashion mogul Nadia Sinclair, was the pinnacle of the fashion world. It was the place where legends were made. And Asha, she was just a small-town girl with a passion for design and a degree from a modest college. Her entry into this exclusive world felt like a fight she had no business winning. But she was determined. She wasn't here by mistake. She had earned this spot. "Ms. Kapoor, welcome. We've been expecting you," a voice broke through her thoughts. Asha turned to find a tall woman in a black pencil skirt and a pristine white blouse walking toward her, a clipboard in hand. "I'm Arya, one of the senior designers here," the woman continued, offering a sharp smile. "Nadia is in the studio right now. She's been looking forward to seeing your work." Asha's nerves fluttered again, but she nodded, smiling back. "Thank you, I'm honored." The senior designer led her through a maze of hallways, each door guarded by glass panels showcasing different collections. Fabrics hung like rich tapestries, and the air was thick with the buzz of creativity, but none of that distracted Asha from the beating of her heart in her chest. As they rounded the corner, they entered the main design studio, a massive, open space alive with color and movement. A dozen designers huddled over sketchpads, scribbling away at new ideas, their faces a mix of focus and excitement. In the center of it all, sitting at an enormous desk, was Nadia Sinclair herself. Asha's breath caught in her throat. Nadia Sinclair was everything Asha had imagined, and more. The CEO exuded confidence, her sharp features framed by dark, flowing hair. She wore a tailored black suit, and her eyes, hidden behind sleek glasses, seemed to pierce right through Asha. Despite the undeniable power she radiated, there was an icy distance to her presence. People had whispered that Nadia was as untouchable as she was brilliant. "Ah, Asha Kapoor, welcome," Nadia said, her voice smooth as silk, though there was a hint of disinterest. She stood and extended her hand. "I've seen your portfolio. You have potential, but in this industry, potential doesn't mean much unless you can prove it." Asha's fingers trembled slightly as she shook Nadia's hand. "I'll prove myself, Miss Sinclair," she replied, her voice steady but laced with the anxiety she was barely keeping in check. Nadia's lips curved into a brief smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I like confidence," she said, before turning to one of the assistants. "Send her to the fitting room. We'll see what she's made of today." As Asha followed the assistant down another hallway, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was already out of her depth. But this was the world she had fought for, and she would fight harder to survive in it. Little did she know, her journey would soon take a turn she never saw coming. As the door to the fitting room swung open, Asha stepped inside, unaware that today would mark the beginning of her most challenging trial yet. One that would see her at her lowest, humiliated in front of the very people she admired. And yet, it was also the day she would find her strength. Asha sank into the worn velvet chair in her small apartment, the dim light of the evening sun filtering through the half-drawn blinds. Her fingers trembled as she held the faded photograph in her hands. It was of a different time, a different life, a life that felt like it belonged to someone else now. In the photo, she was standing beside her mentor, Devika Mehra, the woman who had first introduced her to the world of fashion design. Devika, with her long black hair pulled back into a sleek ponytail and her sharp eyes always full of ambition, had been everything Asha aspired to be. She had taken Asha under her wing when she was a wide-eyed college graduate, offering her not just advice but an opportunity to learn, to grow. Back then, Asha had been full of hope, ready to take on the world. She had believed in the future they would build together, two designers, one vision, unstoppable. But that was before the betrayal. Asha closed her eyes, letting the memory wash over her. It had started innocently enough. Asha had joined Devika's up-and-coming brand, Mehra Couture, eager to make her mark in the fashion industry. She had worked tirelessly, pouring every ounce of her creativity and passion into designs that would elevate the brand. She had believed that Devika saw her as more than just an assistant. She saw her as a partner, a future collaborator. But things had changed when Devika's brand exploded into the mainstream. It was then that Asha realized how much Devika had been holding back. She started receiving little to no credit for her designs. The accolades, the praise, none of it came her way. Instead, Devika took all the credit, stepping into the limelight while Asha remained in the shadows. The final blow had come one fateful evening at a fashion gala. The entire industry was watching, and Asha had worked day and night on a groundbreaking collection that was meant to launch Mera Couture into a new stratosphere. The collection was magnificent, clean lines, bold colors, and intricate details that could change the way people viewed fashion. But at the gala, Devika had introduced the collection as her own. Not once did she mention Asha's name. The heartbreak that had followed was unbearable. The whispers had started almost immediately. Where did this new genius come from? Is she the one behind Mera Couture? Asha had felt her stomach churn as she watched the world adore Devika for something that wasn't truly hers. The worst part, Asha had seen it in Devika's eyes, the cold, calculated indifference. She had used Asha, and when she no longer needed her, she had discarded her like an old sketchbook. Asha had left the gala that night in a daze, feeling as if her heart had been torn out and replaced with cold stone. She had tried to reach out to Devika to talk, to make sense of the sudden shift, but her calls went unanswered. The betrayal was so deep, it felt like an entire world had crumbled around her. But Asha was not someone who could easily be defeated. It took time, but she started to rebuild. She had spent months gathering her strength, sketching, designing in secret, working through every ounce of pain, every tear. The world didn't need to know the truth, but she knew it, and one day, when the time was right, she would make it known. That was when Asha had started dreaming of a new beginning, one that didn't involve Mera Couture or Devika. She would build her own brand from the ground up. She would show the world what it meant to be truly talented, not just a pawn in someone else's game. As she stared at the photo one last time, Asha set it down on the table. Her hands were steady now, the pain starting to fade, replaced by a quiet resolve. The world of Vanguard Studios would be different. She would make sure of that, but first she had to get through today. There was no going back now. The fashion event was a spectacle of opulence, a celebration of beauty, talent, and wealth. The glittering lights bounced off the pristine glass walls of the venue, casting reflections that danced along the faces of the carefully chosen guests, designers, influencers, celebrities, and industry moguls. The air hummed with a low murmur of excited conversation, punctuated by the occasional burst of laughter. Asha adjusted her dress nervously as she entered the crowded hall, clutching the invitation to the event like a lifeline. She had been tasked with presenting her first full collection at the event, something she had worked on for months. Her heart pounded in her chest, the anxiety of the moment threatening to crush her. This is it, she thought. This is my chance to prove I belong here. The crowd parted as she made her way to the stage area where the runway had been set up. She could feel the eyes of the room on her, the same eyes that had watched her in the days leading up to the event, some with curiosity, others with outright skepticism. Most of the designers at Vanguard Studios had already established themselves as giants in the industry. She was the newcomer, the untested talent in a sea of seasoned professionals. Nadia Sinclair was seated front and center, as expected, her expression unreadable. Her presence loomed like an unspoken challenge, a reminder of the power and influence she commanded in this space. Asha's stomach twisted. She could feel the weight of the moment, but what she didn't know was that the real test wasn't her designs, it was something much more sinister. The event began, and one by one, models strutted down the runway, showcasing the latest collections from the most famous names in fashion. Asha's heart sank as she watched the effortless confidence with which the top designers controlled the stage. It felt like a dream, one that was just a little out of her reach. When her time came, Asha was ushered backstage by one of the assistants, who gave her a tight smile. "It's your turn, Ms. Kapoor," they said, though their voice lacked the warmth Asha had hoped for. Her models stepped onto the runway, each dressed in a design that Asha had painstakingly crafted. The first few steps were fine. The crowd nodded approvingly, whispers of approval floating through the air. But as the final model took her turn, a collective gasp filled the room. Asha's heart stopped. The hem of the last dress snagged on the model's heel, and the fabric tore with a sharp, audible rip. The model stumbled, catching herself just in time to finish the walk, but the damage was done. The crowd's laughter echoed through the hall, and Asha felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. But it wasn't just the minor mishap. As the models made their way backstage, she heard the whispers, the snide remarks, the judgment in every passing comment. "She must have rushed through this collection. It's not up to par with what's expected." Didn't she think to double-check the fittings? Poor thing, this is what happens when you let amateurs into the industry. Asha's head spun, her hands shook as she clutched the edges of the curtain backstage, trying to steady herself. The humiliation wasn't just in the eyes of the crowd, it was in the way they dismissed her. In the way her designs, her passion were trivialized by a simple mistake. But what stung the most was the silence from Nadia Sinclair. Asha had been hoping for a kind word or at least a nod of encouragement from the woman who had hired her. Instead, Nadia's gaze was cold, indifferent. Asha's eyes met hers for a brief second, and in that moment she saw it, the barely hidden contempt. Nadia had already judged her, and Asha had failed before she had even begun. Ms. Kapoor, a voice broke through her thoughts. It was Arya, the senior designer. Her eyes were tight, her smile forced. You should come with me, there's a meeting with Nadia. Asha nodded, though her legs felt like jelly beneath her. She followed Arya, feeling the weight of every step. The meeting was the last thing she wanted. She had already been humiliated in front of the industry's most powerful figures. What more could they possibly say? But when she stepped into the private room with Nadia, the air felt thick with tension. Nadia was sitting behind a sleek, polished desk, her fingers steepled as she regarded Asha with a quiet, calculating expression. Asha, Nadia began, her voice smooth but her tone cutting. That presentation was a disaster. Asha's stomach dropped. I know, Miss Sinclair, I'm so sorry, it wasn't meant to. No, don't apologize, Nadia interrupted, her voice firm. You don't have the luxury of apologizing in this industry. Do you understand? Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if Asha's failure was not just a personal disappointment but a stain on the entire company. Asha swallowed, her throat dry. Yes, I understand. And frankly, Nadia continued, leaning forward slightly, I'm not sure you're cut out for this. Vanguard Studios doesn't make mistakes like this. We don't tolerate failure in the spotlight. The words cut deep, and Asha had to fight to keep her composure. She had worked so hard to get here, and now it was all crumbling. Nadia stood, her heels clicking sharply against the floor as she made her way to the door. I suggest you take the rest of the evening to think about your future here. This isn't a place for second chances, Asha. If you can't pull it together, you won't last. With those final words, she left the room, and Asha was left standing alone in the dim, sterile space. The humiliation, the failure, all of it weighed down on her like a suffocating blanket. But she wasn't going to let this be the end. Not yet. The events of the evening replayed in Asha's mind like a broken record. She sat in the dimly lit corner of her apartment, the remnants of the night's tears still fresh on her face. Her mind raced through the harsh words from Nadia Sinclair, each one a bitter reminder that her dreams were hanging by a thread. But even in the dark, there was a flicker of light. She wasn't done yet. Asha's gaze shifted to the laptop sitting on her desk. The files were open, organized with precision, each one carrying a piece of the puzzle that could turn everything around. The evidence. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she thought back to the moment when everything began to fall apart, the moment Devika had betrayed her, stealing her designs and making them her own. It had been painful, humiliating, but it had also given Asha a sharp sense of clarity. She had to take action. There was no going back. For months, she had quietly gathered the evidence of the theft, the emails, the design files, the legal documents, even photographs of Devika wearing pieces that Asha had created in secret. She had kept it all hidden, a safety net for the day when she could finally expose the truth. That day was now. Asha opened the folder labeled Proof and reviewed the documents once again. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore, it was about justice. It was about taking her place in the world, the place she deserved. Her hand trembled as she clicked open the video file. A clip from the fashion gala, the moment when Devika had paraded around the collection as her own. In the video, Asha could see herself in the background, standing off to the side as Devika took the spotlight. The sting of that night flooded her chest again, but this time, Asha's eyes narrowed in determination. This was the moment she would expose it all. She wasn't going to be overlooked any longer. Her phone buzzed, shaking her from her thoughts. It was a message from Arya. We need to talk, urgent. Asha's brow furrowed. Arya had been distant after the fashion event, and there was something in her tone that made Asha uneasy. She quickly typed a response. Where? I'll come to you, you need to see something. Before Asha could reply, the doorbell rang. It was Arya standing in the doorway with a look of quiet urgency. She was no longer in her usual designer attire, but a simple black jacket and jeans, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Something about her appearance seemed off, as if she was torn between worlds. "Come in," Asha said, standing aside to let her in. Arya stepped into the apartment, glancing around quickly as if making sure they were alone. She closed the door behind her and turned to face Asha. "This is serious," Arya said, her voice low. "I need to show you something, Asha, something that can change everything." Asha felt her pulse quicken. "What is it?" Arya hesitated for a moment, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small folder, sliding it across the table to Asha. "This is a copy of the contract Devika had me sign when I joined Mera Couture," Arya said, her eyes darting nervously. "And this," she pointed to a series of documents within the folder, "is proof of what she did. Proof that she stole your designs, that she's been using them without your consent, even after she cut you out." Asha's breath caught in her throat. She picked up the folder, her hands shaking as she flipped through the pages. There it was, everything she needed. A legally binding contract where Devika had paid Arya to keep quiet about the origin of certain designs. But it wasn't just about the money, it was about control. The document made it clear that Asha's work had been labeled as collateral for Devika's success. "And you've kept this," Asha whispered, her mind reeling. "I knew you were right," Arya said, her voice barely audible. "I saw the way Devika was treating you, the way she took everything from you and built her empire on your back. I couldn't be part of that anymore. I couldn't stay silent." Asha felt a wave of mixed emotions, anger, gratitude, and a deep sense of betrayal. But it was clear now Arya was on her side, and this evidence, it was more than enough to take down Devika once and for all. "There's more," Arya added, pulling out a USB drive from her bag. "I've got the footage from the gala, the moment Devika took credit for your designs. It's all there." Asha looked up at Arya, her eyes wide. "You have the video?" Arya nodded. "It's the moment that will prove everything. If you take this to the right people, it's over for her. She won't be able to deny it." Asha felt her heart race, a surge of adrenaline flooding her veins. "This is it," she said, almost to herself. "This is my chance." "You're not alone in this," Arya said softly, her gaze sincere. "I'll help you. We can take her down together." Asha nodded, feeling a strength she hadn't realized she had. The pieces of her plan were falling into place. All that was left now was to expose the truth. She could feel the shift in the air. A storm was coming. And this time, she would be the one in control. Asha stood in front of her laptop, the evidence laid out before her like a chessboard. The USB drive from Arya was inserted, and the video footage from the gala began to play. She watched it once, twice, each time her anger building as she saw Devika on the screen, shamelessly taking credit for the designs Asha had poured her soul into. The moment that had once been a gut-wrenching humiliation was now a powerful weapon. But it wasn't just the video that mattered. The documents, the contracts, the photographs, they all told the same story. The world had been duped, and it was time to expose the truth. Asha's fingers hovered over the keyboard, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. This wasn't just about her revenge on Devika. This was bigger than that. This was about reclaiming her place in an industry that had been stacked against her from the beginning. This was about her voice, her legacy, and her right to be recognized for the talent she had always known she had. Her phone buzzed, a message from Arya. "I've contacted a few key people. They'll be at the Fashion Federation event tomorrow. It's the perfect place to make your move." Asha stared at the screen, feeling the magnitude of what she was about to do. The Fashion Federation event was one of the most prestigious in the industry, attended by the top players in the fashion world: investors, journalists, influencers, and designers. If there was ever a time to make a statement, it was tomorrow. She looked down at the stack of documents on her desk. It was time to turn the page, to make her comeback. No more being a silent player in the background. She would take back what was hers. Asha spent the rest of the evening preparing. The video, the contracts, the photos, everything needed to be in perfect order. She wasn't just going to expose Devika. She was going to dismantle everything she had built with lies and deceit. Asha knew that the Fashion Federation event would be her stage, and she would step into the spotlight with all the power of the truth behind her. The next morning, Asha awoke with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in months. She knew what she had to do. No more playing small, no more apologies. She was ready to take her place among the elite, to prove that talent, not manipulation or deceit, was what truly mattered in this industry. The venue was a sea of elegance when Asha arrived at the Fashion Federation event. The grand ballroom was adorned with intricate floral arrangements and glistening chandeliers. Guests mingled in tailored suits and extravagant gowns, their conversations floating above the soft clinking of glasses. Asha could already feel the weight of their gazes as she entered, her heart pounding in her chest. This was the moment she had been working for, the moment when her voice would finally be heard. Arya had kept her word. She had secured the attention of a few influential journalists as well as representatives from the Fashion Federation itself. Asha's plan was simple: to present the truth, the evidence, and to do it in a way that no one could ignore. As Asha made her way through the crowd, she spotted Nadia Sinclair near the back of the room, speaking with a group of investors. The woman's icy demeanor was as sharp as ever, her power palpable. But Asha didn't flinch. Nadia wasn't going to control this narrative any longer. Asha approached the podium where a small crowd had gathered, drawn in by the presence of a few industry insiders. She waited for a moment, gathering her strength. When the crowd hushed, she stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. "I have something I need to show you all," Asha said, holding up a tablet that displayed the video footage from the gala. "Something you need to see, something that changes everything." The room fell silent as Asha pressed play. The video of Devika parading around the collection as her own flashed on the screen. Gasps rippled through the crowd as they watched, stunned by the undeniable evidence of betrayal. But Asha didn't stop there. She began to show the contracts, the emails, the photographs of her original designs, all of it carefully arranged to expose the truth. The murmurs grew louder as the audience began to piece it all together. They had been lied to, deceived by one of the most powerful women in the industry. And then Asha did something that sent a chill through the room. She revealed the final piece of evidence, the contract signed by Arya, the one that confirmed the extent of Devika's manipulation and theft. "This is not just about one woman's ambition," Asha said, her voice now rising with conviction. "This is about the system that allows it to happen. The system that rewards lies and punishes the truth. I'm here to change that." The room was now buzzing with disbelief. The journalists were taking notes, the investors were whispering amongst themselves, and Asha could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The power was no longer in Devika's hands, it was in hers. As Asha stood there, breathing in the weight of the moment, she saw Nadia approaching, her face cold with fury. But it was too late. Asha had already won. The shockwave of Asha's revelation rippled through the fashion world like a tidal wave. The scandal spread like wildfire across social media, news outlets, and fashion blogs. The footage, the contracts, the photographs, all of it was impossible to deny. Asha had done what no one had dared. She had exposed the carefully constructed empire built on lies and deception. The fallout was swift. Within hours, Devika's empire began to crumble. The investors who had once flocked to her side now pulled out in droves, unwilling to stake their money on a woman whose reputation was now in tatters. The headlines were unforgiving. Fashion mogul Devika Mehra exposed for stealing designs. Industry giant falls as truth comes to light. Betrayal at the top. How a young designer took down a fashion empire. Asha couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication as she watched the media frenzy unfold. This was the moment she had worked so hard for, the moment when the world saw her for who she truly was. But as she watched the collapse of Devika's brand, a part of her hesitated. She had wanted justice, but this wasn't just about Devika anymore. The whole industry had been complicit in enabling the lies. The players she had once looked up to, the ones who had dismissed her as an outsider, now had no choice but to confront the uncomfortable truth. The morning after the revelation, Asha sat in her apartment, her fingers tracing the rim of a coffee cup. Her phone buzzed repeatedly, calls from old contacts, messages from industry professionals, even a few apologies from people who had turned their backs on her in the past. But none of it mattered. What mattered was what came next. The doorbell rang, pulling her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Arya standing in the doorway, her face tight with concern. "Asha," Arya said softly, stepping inside. "It's bad, it's really bad. They're pulling all the funding from Mehra Couture. The Fashion Federation is threatening to revoke her membership. Investors are asking for a full investigation. Devika's empire is falling apart." "I know," Asha replied, her voice steady, "and it's just the beginning." Arya's eyes flickered with doubt. "What do you mean?" Asha's gaze hardened as she looked out the window at the bustling city below. "Devika's fall is just a symptom of a much bigger problem. The way this industry works, the way people like her get away with everything, it needs to change. I'm not just taking her down, I'm taking down the system." Arya nodded slowly, her eyes filled with understanding. You're right, it's bigger than just her, but Asha, you have to be careful. You've exposed a lot and there are powerful people who are going to want to protect their own interests. You can't do this alone. Asha turned to face Arya, a fire burning in her eyes. I don't plan on doing it alone. I have you, and I have the truth on my side. For the first time in a long while, Asha felt a sense of purpose. She wasn't just fighting for her career. She was fighting for a future where talent, hard work, and integrity weren't overshadowed by manipulation and deceit. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and strategy sessions. Asha was now the face of the movement, the one who had brought down the mighty, and the world was watching. But the battle wasn't over. Devika, though weakened, still had power in the industry, and she wasn't going to let it go without a fight. Asha knew that Devika would try to fight back. The woman was ruthless, but Asha had something that Devika didn't. She had the people, she had the truth. One evening, as Asha sat with Arya going over the next steps in their plan, her phone rang. The caller ID read Nadia Sinclair. Asha hesitated for only a moment before answering. Nadia, she said, her voice neutral. To what do I owe the pleasure? I have to admit, Nadia's voice came through, smooth and controlled as ever. You've certainly caused quite a stir. Asha raised an eyebrow, sensing the subtle threat in Nadia's words. I didn't realize you cared. Oh, I care, Nadia replied, a slight edge in her tone. You've made a powerful enemy, Asha, and while you think you're winning right now, just know that there are forces much larger than you at play. You're playing a dangerous game. Asha felt the weight of her words, but she wasn't about to back down. If it's a dangerous game, then I'm playing it well, and I've already won. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. We'll see, Nadia said finally, her voice cold. We'll see. The line clicked and Asha hung up, her heart racing with a mix of adrenaline and caution. She knew that this wasn't over. Nadia wasn't one to let things go so easily, and Devika still had her allies, but Asha wasn't going to back down, not now, not ever. The fall of one empire was only the beginning. The rise of another was just around the corner. The days after Devika's public collapse felt surreal to Asha. The phone calls, the meetings, the offers, everything was happening so fast. The world was finally recognizing her, but it came with a price. Her inbox was flooded with messages, some from industry giants eager to work with her, others from those who had once ignored her, now hopping for her favor. It was overwhelming, yet it felt like the culmination of everything she had worked toward. But Asha knew better than to get swept up in the excitement. She had a bigger goal now. The truth had set the stage, but her true mission was just beginning, to build something of her own, something that was hers and hers alone. Arya had been invaluable in this next phase. Together, they sifted through offers, negotiating partnerships with integrity, choosing the right backers who shared their vision. Asha wasn't interested in selling out. She wasn't about to let the same system that had elevated Devika continue to dominate the industry. She had to create something new, a space where real talent could thrive, and a sense of community could replace the cutthroat competition that had marred her journey so far. Asha's new brand wasn't going to be about following trends, it would be about setting them. It would be about inclusivity, transparency, and real artistry. No more hiding in the shadows. She would lead by example, showing the world what fashion could be when it was done right. The first step was finding the right team. Asha knew she couldn't do this alone. She needed people who believed in her vision, people who weren't afraid to take risks, people who were ready to change the industry from the inside out. Asha sat down at her desk late one evening, scrolling through a list of potential candidates. She needed fresh talent, interns who were hungry, eager to prove themselves, and who had a passion for creating something different. One name stood out, Maya Patel, a young designer with an eye for unique silhouettes and a fearless attitude. Asha had heard of her through the grapevine, and her reputation was exactly what Asha needed, raw, unpolished, but full of potential. Maya was the type of person who could help Asha turn her brand into something bold and groundbreaking. Let's meet, Asha typed into her email, hitting send. It was time to build the foundation of her new empire. The first meeting with Maya was a whirlwind. She entered the room with a mix of confidence and nervous energy, her eyes bright with excitement. She wore a piece of her own design, a minimalist but striking black dress with intricate beadwork that spoke to her talent. I've heard a lot about you, Asha said as they shook hands. I've seen your work and I think you're exactly what this brand needs. Maya's eyes lit up. Thank you. I've been following your journey, Asha. I know what you've been through and I admire how you've handled it. It would be an honor to work with you. Asha smiled, feeling the first spark of something real in this new venture. She wasn't just assembling a team, she was building a family. A family of people who believed in the power of creativity and authenticity. As the weeks passed, Asha's brand began to take shape. She worked tirelessly, putting in long hours with Maya and the other new interns who had joined. Each piece of the collection they created was a testament to their shared vision. They pushed boundaries, broke rules, and refused to conform to the narrow standards set by the industry. But it wasn't just about the designs. Asha worked hard to foster a culture of inclusivity and respect, encouraging her team to speak up, to be themselves, and to contribute their ideas. She wanted them to feel empowered, to know that their voices mattered just as much as their skills. Word began to spread. Fashion insiders who had previously ignored her were starting to take notice. Some were still skeptical. After all, Asha was still seen as the woman who brought down Devika Mehra, but others were excited to see what she would do next. Her new brand wasn't just about fashion, it was a statement. A statement that the industry could be better, more inclusive, more supportive. It was time for the first big show. Asha had spent months preparing for it, and now the day had arrived. The anticipation was electric as the models strutted down the runway, showcasing the pieces they had poured their hearts into. Each piece told a story, stories of resilience, innovation, and the power of starting over. As the final model walked the runway, Asha stood backstage, her heart racing. The applause was deafening, and she couldn't help but smile. This was it, her rebirth, her new beginning. The fashion world was watching, and for the first time, Asha wasn't just a spectator. She was the one leading the charge. That night after the show, Asha stood on the balcony of her apartment, looking out over the city. The skyline sparkled in the distance, and for the first time in a long while, she felt at peace. She had done it. She had taken everything that had been stolen from her, everything that had been used to tear her down, and turned it into something beautiful. She had reclaimed her power and built something that was hers, something that would leave a lasting mark on the industry. This was just the beginning. The rise of Asha's new brand had only just begun, and the world was about to see the full force of what she was capable of. There was no turning back now. The night was electric with anticipation as Asha stood before a packed room at the annual Fashion Federation Gala. The spotlight was on her, and the weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. This was the culmination of everything she had fought for, her comeback, her rise, her moment of redemption. For so long, Asha had been the underdog, the one people overlooked. They had whispered behind her back, called her naive, and laughed at her dreams. But tonight, everything had changed. The world now knew who she was, who she'd always been, and they could no longer ignore her. Asha stepped up to the stage, her heart pounding as she adjusted the microphone in front of her. She glanced out into the crowd, seeing the familiar faces of old rivals and new supporters, some who had once cast her aside, others who had believed in her from the start. Her gaze flicked to Arya, who stood in the audience with a proud smile, and then to Maya, her key designer, whose passion and talent had helped bring this dream to life. The room fell silent. "I stand before you tonight," Asha began, her voice strong and steady, "not as the woman you once thought I was, but as the woman I was always meant to be. I've been through hell. I've been torn down, betrayed, humiliated, and knocked off course time and time again, but through it all, I never gave up." She paused, letting her words settle in the air. The audience was hanging on every syllable. "I was humiliated by a system that values power over truth, appearances over substance. I was told that my voice didn't matter, that my designs weren't good enough. But I stand here tonight to tell you that I was wronged and I was right. I am a creator, a designer, a force to be reckoned with, and this industry, this world can and will change." Asha took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the years of struggle lift off her shoulders. "When I exposed the truth about Devika Mehra, I wasn't just taking down one woman, I was exposing a broken system. I wanted to show that the truth cannot be silenced, that no matter how big the empire, no matter how much power one person holds, the truth will always rise to the surface." Her gaze shifted across the room, but it wasn't just about tearing someone down, it was about rebuilding something better, something that celebrates artistry, diversity, and integrity, and that's why I'm standing here now. She smiled, a quiet, powerful smile that spoke of everything she had endured and everything she had overcome. "I'm proud to announce that we've already begun to do that. My brand, our brand, is more than just a collection of clothes. It's a statement, it's a movement, and it's here to stay." The audience erupted into applause, some with tears in their eyes, others clapping enthusiastically. Asha could feel the warmth of their support, the weight of their recognition. She had earned this. She had earned every moment of it. And Asha continued, the edge of her smile growing sharper. I don't intend to stop here. This is just the beginning. She paused, letting the words sink in. To everyone who doubted me, to everyone who tried to silence me, I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. I've only just begun. There was a moment of silence as the crowd absorbed her words. Then, slowly but surely, the applause grew louder. A standing ovation for Asha, the woman who had fought, the woman who had risen, the woman who had become more than anyone had ever imagined. Asha took a moment to soak it all in. This was it. She had come full circle. From the humiliated woman who had been shoved aside to the powerful designer who now stood in front of the very people who had once disregarded her. Her story had come full circle, and it was only just beginning. The audience had witnessed her redemption, but Asha knew that true redemption wasn't about public applause. It was about something deeper. It was about proving to herself that she was enough, that she had always been enough. And as the applause continued, Asha knew this was just one chapter in a much larger story. She had taken everything that had been thrown at her, every obstacle, every betrayal, and had turned it into something beautiful. Now, she was ready to write the next chapter. The world had watched as she was humiliated, but now they were watching as she reclaimed her place in the world.